Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ripple Effect, where we explore the power of volunteer service. My name is John Geary, and I'm president of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Bonnie Trinclisti, who is the clinical director of the Native American Health Center in Oakland, California. We've had 67 volunteers serve over the last 30 years at the NHAC, including this year, and next year will mark our 30th year of partnership together. Bonnie, that's quite a story. I'd love to know how this got started and where was the origin and how did we get going in such a long and meaningful partnership?
Well, I joined the JVC in 1980, and we sometimes it feels like 1880, but it was 1980. And I was a nurse in the hospital, and I decided that I didn't want to do hospital nursing. I wanted to be a nurse practitioner, and I've always wanted to do some service, Peace Corps, and someone came by my desk and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of the JVC? It's in Sojourner Truth magazine," which I don't even know if Sojourner Truth is a magazine anymore. Anyhow, long story. So I joined the JVC, and I wanted to go someplace far away from Western Pennsylvania, which is where I was born and raised, and had lived in Boston for a minute. But you know, when I was the first nurse that they had ever in the Southwest that they had ever used. And they said, "Well, what do we do with a nurse?" And I said, "Well, I can do a whole lot of things. I can do community health nursing. I can do, and I'm selling myself, and I'm thinking, listen, I can get a job. Why aren't you taking me?"
Yeah,
Dennis
yeah.
Michael Callahan was the area director or the area coordinator. And he interviewed me and he said, "Well, I think we could find something for you to do. Would you be willing to go to San Jose and be a community health nurse in a skilled workshop where we have to monitor the psychiatric meds?" So I did that for a year. During that year, I kept thinking, what am I going to do after this year? I can't go back to hospital nursing. I also simultaneously, my placement in San Jose allowed me to do hospice nursing. So I did some hospice nursing through Catholic Charities in the hospice of the South Bay. And so then I applied. I thought, I had taken my GRE because I had always thought I would go to graduate school in nursing. I wasn't sure. So I applied to UCSF, and they were like, "Oh my, you were a community health nurse, you were independent." It was so non-clinical nursing. It was so community based. I did, like a personal health education class for, people who are chronically mentally ill. And in doing that, I was like, I was creating things. It was the most creative job I'd ever had. And I loved it because it wasn't hospital nursing.
Yeah.
So then I got into the family nurse practitioner program. Okay, then fast forward it to 1983, and I and I went to Native American Health Center was my first job. And about 3 years in, I think, I said, we need more help around here. There was just no money for ancillary staff. And I said, I
Yeah.
belong to this organization. They have really smart people that come out of for college, and they could do, because we hired people who are native and also did a lot of job training, but we
Yeah.
needed people to be like organizational people who like knew how to do case management in a sense, just some outreach, some social service support. And I thought, this is a perfect job for somebody in the JVC who doesn't know what they want to do next. And actually, a lot of the people I was in the JVC with, they actually went on to become social workers. They did family support
Yep.
to friends outside, families of incarcerated people. It was a myriad of, and they all went into graduate school. So I thought, this is great. So I made the first application, and I think it was in 83 or 84. So I became the administrator, and we got somebody
Oh,
in 1989 or 88 or 89. I think it was 88 that they replaced, 88 to 89. And it was Mary Frick. and Mary Frick was a nurse, Mary Teresa, and she was the most Catholic girl I ever met. And she was from Chicago, and she had a master's in divinity, and this was not how I came into the JVC. I came in,
Yeah.
I was pretty spiritual, but I can't say I was like really Catholic. But she was a delight. She was like such a great woman. Anyhow, so that's when we started. And every year after that, we got volunteers, and then the other departments. That was in medical, and we had other nurses. Then gradually, we got the other departments like community health, outreach. They all said, "Hey, I'd like a JV." Well, JVC was like, "How many? You can't have all these JVs." In the old days, and I don't know how it is now. They would say these can't be permanent positions. Well, that isn't how it was for us, because a nurse costs a lot of money, and a lot of the nurses we get through the JV aren't interested in hospital nursing either. Some of them do want to go in, but it's really hard to get into a new grad orientation program in hospitals. So we've had a whole varied number of kind of volunteers. And I was administrator probably till about 7 or 8 years ago, when I took on more responsibility in the clinic, and one of the clinic directors, the managers decided that they would take over the role of writing the application and applying, but I still interview the nurses, and it's been a really amazing journey, and it's been invaluable to Native American. We actually got someone last year who did all this data for us and data analysis, and it was like, oh my God, these people are so much smarter than
I think that person stayed on, didn't they? Somebody stayed on last year.
Yeah, they stayed on, and then I think they got into medical school maybe, or they went to
Yeah.
UCSF, and now they're
Yeah.
doing data in UCSF and
Yeah.
applying to medical school. I mean, we have a lot of nurses or a lot of Jesuit volunteers who aren't nurses, who actually have medical, like science backgrounds, who want to go to medical school. And what we try to do for those people is let them shadow the doctors. We have a family practice, pediatric, OBGYN, and internal medicine. So they get to shadow those doctors and see if
Yeah.
that's kind of the path they
Yeah.
want to take.
Yeah.
And they also come. I mean, we have 9 family nurse practitioners, and they all love the Jesuit volunteers, and all the nurses go work side by side with our nurse practitioners.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
So
it's great.
tell me, Bonnie, the other part of you kind of alluded to it. You're both a director of one of our long-term partners, but you were also once a volunteer. And it's always interesting, Bonnie. Each has their own unique story, but there's one thing that I think binds us all together, which is that phrase we love, ruined for life. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about how you've been ruined for life.
Well, when I went to work for Native American, I used Native American or the Jesuit Volunteer Corps experience in my resume, because I said that I was committed to being in community health and serving people who were at very high risk for no health services. I firmly believe that health care is not a privilege but a right, and I feel like there are not enough access for people who live on the edge. So Native American was a perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
And I kind of have carried that with me through my entire life. And when I got married, my husband and I talked about he has his own business, or had his own business. He's retired now. And he said, and I said, I can't. I know I could make a lot of money in other places, but I'm never going to leave places that are providing services to underserved people. So
Yep.
you have to buy that. You have to buy into that. And he said, I buy into it. He loved the JVC. He had all these friends in the JVC. It was like fun. So we kind of made it work. We had once you get into the Native American Health Center as a nonprofit, it's like your community, and it's the community that I love. So I ended up moving permanently to California and going to school here, and then my professional and personal network was here. And the Jesuit Volunteer Corps provided me an opportunity to move to a new space and have a huge circle of support, which I think is so important when you get out of college.
Mm,
When
yeah.
you get out of college, you are kind of like used to being in a dorm or in whatever you did in your undergraduate, but life isn't like that. When you go to work, you have to really work at making social connection with people you might not agree with
Yeah.
and and who are different from you and who aren't all in school and who don't have a million hours of free time. So it became for me it allowed me to move to California, but also there was this group that I still stay connected with my housemates.
Mm,
I hear from them like at holidays. Although the one housemate I had has actually I'm the godmother for his one of his first son. He's been around for every major event in my life, and I've been
yeah.
around for his. So
Yeah.
it's this connection that allows you to be supported and to strike out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my Jesuit volunteer nurses at Native American do the exact same thing. They want to
Mm.
strike out, but they don't want to be alone, and they're moved by a value that the Jesuit Volunteer Corps allows them to experience wholly.
That's beautifully said. I think you're right. It is an area where you can find community built
Hmm.
around the common value of service. Tell me, I'm curious. You've had 30, years of volunteers at the NAHC, and you've seen many of them. How would you compare the volunteer of today to the volunteer of yesterday?
Well, we've had a lot of variation in volunteers. we've had we've had some very like focused on building their like household communities, very distraught if that didn't come together. We've had some very like I'm here to just see what the world's like, very avant-garde. From very different all very different walks of life. So it's
Mm.
really interesting. I don't think there's any stereotypical Jesuit volunteer.
Ah.
They're all so different and they also have such varied backgrounds. The interesting thing about this year's volunteers, when we interviewed them for the placements this year, not for next year, but this year, there were two, I think, that actually had parents who were Jesuit volunteers.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh my God, am I that old that these people who I don't even know have kids this age?" Well, I have kids that age, and I actually tried to talk them to going into the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and they said, "Mom, we don't want to leave California." We don't-
Well, we have placements in California. Reassure them.
I'm like, it's great. You should do it. But anyhow, it was a very growing experience for me, and I think that our volunteers to date, I check in with them pretty regularly. They feel the same way. They feel that it's just amazing. I don't know, once you're able to actually live your values and not, it's just not something you do like when you feel politically active or you want to go to church on Sunday or whatever, but you actually get to give something.
Mm.
It's an amazing sense of fulfillment. I mean, look at me. I've been at Native American Health Center for 41 years now.
That's amazing.
Well, I
Congratulations.
have to retire because I'm getting old and I need to do other things.
Yeah, well, don't go anywhere too quick.
No, no. I'll always stay connected.
Yeah.
Recently, we started a nursing scholarship fund
Mm.
for people in nursing at Native who are going on to school. We have a lot of MAs who are so smart but don't have all the advantage of being
Yeah.
able to afford school. So we started a scholarship fund in my mother's name because my mother loved the
Oh,
Jesuit Volunteer Corps. So we started this, and I told them, well, even if I retire, I'm going to be on that selection committee. And two of our
good.
JVs who have gone back to graduate school in nursing have gotten scholarships from
Ah,
the Mother's Scholarship Fund.
that's beautiful. That is a
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
story.
it's actually quite
Yeah.
exciting. I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, maybe as a way to sort of bring a close, I have one more question. I'm interested to know. It's a lot of our volunteers come into this program. They're thinking about different options and things, and wondering how this will fit in to their
Sure.
life and the decisions of making a career. And What advice would you give your younger self if you're when you were sitting back there and thinking about, the next step in your life after college? And what advice would you give yourself when you think about, your field and your area as a career?
Well, before I joined the Corps, I actually was a nurse in a hospital, so I
Mm,
wasn't kind of just coming out of college, but I think it all happens for a reason. So if somebody's looking at the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, I don't think there's any like accidents. I really believe that if you're looking at the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, there's something in your core that wants to explore a new way, a different thing, less traditional. Like try to live on 50 or 60 or whatever we give you now, dollars a month. See what it means to live simply and in community.
yeah.
It's a different feeling. It's not co-housing with people you don't know that don't have any connection. You have this connection. You all belong to this organization that offers tremendous support and allows you to go to a place. It doesn't even have to be that far from your home, but to explore a different way of life. Because I think in our society, we really put a lot of emphasis on making money
Mm,
and being successful and being able to afford all the gadgets that people have, to buy into the
yeah.
consumerism. And this kind of makes you take a step back and just to kind of, in a really safe way, be a wrap around community that lets you explore
Mm,
another avenue.
yeah.
That's what I would say.
And it's a community for your lifetime, as you said earlier. So it really makes a difference. Well, Bonnie, thank you very much. This was great.